Welcome back to the Nomad Hedge, everybody. In today's market rundown, we will be taking a look at the S&P 500 as well as Bitcoin, and then we're going to move on to the US dollar as well as Tesla in the end, because there's some interesting elite wave counts going on with Tesla. So I thought that was interesting to add on to this video. So if you haven't already, consider liking and subscribing, and let's get into the video. Let's begin by taking a look at the S&P 500, and if we move on to a daily chart, we can see that price is now currently finding support, or I would say temporarily support here at the 21 EMA, which is this red line here, and it also coincides with this POC line. So we're going to see now if the S&P 500 is going to manage to keep above this level. And what I've been talking about previously is that we could see a potential scenario where we get an extension of wave 5. Now, if we're not going to get an extension of wave 5, we're likely going to see a correction here, which would correct this entire move from April lows. So if we take a look at some of the indicators, we can see that the RSI is still playing out here, that we do have a negative momentum here despite price moving up higher. If we move on a little bit lower here, we can see that the MACD is still on a sell signal. We also have this negative momentum reading here below the center line, and that suggests that sellers are actually back into this market. Now, it could flip during the day, and so for now, this one is suggesting that sellers are now coming back to this market, but we're seeing that the money flow indicator is ticking up, so that could be an indication that people are actually buying the dip here, and that we could see this potential scenario that we're going to get an extension of wave 5. Now, if we switch over to a weekly chart, it's pretty important to understand that we're still in a bullish phase as long as we are above the weekly 8 EMA, which is this line here. We've been above this line for a very long time now. If we would get a correction, we could likely see this correction just being a very shallow one, where we just retest the former highs here, and that would also coincide with the 21 EMA. Now, the reason why it would be more logical for the S&P 500 to move up higher is that if we would get an extension of wave 5, that would mean any pullback or correction would just be a retest here of the former highs, right? So if we're not getting an extension of wave 5, we could see this correction here playing out to be much deeper, and if we would actually break the former highs, we could potentially see price moving down towards this 55 EMA, which is right here, and that would coincide with the daily 233 EMA, which is right here, and that would also coincide with the anchored VWAP. Both scenarios are correct. It's just what the market wants, right? So is the market still convinced that the S&P 500 should go higher, or will it break and start to go lower from here? So now if we take a look at the price action, since we're still above the POC line, the bulls are still in control, and we looked at the weekly 8 EMA, we're still above that level, and we could await a scenario where this thing could be extended. So with that said, we will be taking a look at Bitcoin and see how the price action looks over there, to see if it ties up with the S&P 500 and if we can find clues where this market is going. Switching over to BTC, we can see that Bitcoin is currently trading below the 55 EMA. So unlike the S&P 500, we are below all these key moving averages. We're looking at the 8 EMA, the 21 EMA, and now officially below that 55 EMA. So it looks as if we're approaching this 89 EMA, which coincides with this former highs here. And we can see that it's also approaching this Fib 1 level, or the Fib 100% extension, which is where typically you see wave C concluding. So this could be a potential flat correction before we start to move higher. Now, if we take a look at the weekly chart, we can see that we are below this crucial 8 EMA, and that could suggest that the S&P 500 could be heading there as well. But we're still above that level when we looked at the S&P 500, and so it's just a matter of time here if we're going to see lower prices ahead, and that the correction, or the real correction, will begin to ensue. Now, if we take a look at some of the indicators here, we can see that the weekly MACD is currently on a sell signal. We're seeing the money flow indicator being punched down pretty hard here, and so we'll see the 21 EMA could act as support, or that if we switch over to the daily chart again, we can see that this former high here has officially not yet broken. So if we're looking for a potential support here at the Fib 100% extension, that could mean that this correction is over and that we could see Bitcoin moving up higher from here. So from a risk reward standpoint, this is actually a great way to maybe start a position or add on to your current position if you think that this former highs here is not going to be broken down. But usually what the market does is that it shakes out the people here, and then it could move a little bit lower. So one could maybe put a stop right there and take advantage of any price move if find support from this level. So it's still in this wait and see mode. We looked at the S&P 500. Are we going to see an extension of this wave 5, or is the correction going to continue and break below that 21 EMA. Now, when we look at Bitcoin for that matter, if we're going to get an extension of wave 5, that means we could get a support here, move a little bit higher, maybe retest this POC line, and once that wave 5 for the S&P 500 has completed, we could see another drawdown here where we continue the correction. So there are multiple scenarios to look at this, but for now I would actually start a position right here or add on to my current positions and see if we could actually get a bounce from here and take advantage of any rally if this correction were to be over. Now, before we conclude the crypto session, I want to emphasize the Tether dominance versus the BTC dominance. And we can see here that Tether dominance has actually found support 3 times here, and it looks as if this thing wants to go higher. Now, if we take a look at this thing on a daily chart, we had an official breakout yesterday, and right now with the market rising, we're seeing Bitcoin rising, we're seeing alts rising. All we're getting right here is just a retest of this former high. So if we're actually getting an official break below this former support here, that could mean that we could see higher prices for BTC and other cryptocurrencies. But if we're finding support here and the Tether dominance moves higher, I would be a little bit cautious and maybe look toward more further downside price action for Bitcoin and the rest of the market. Let's also take a quick look at DXY, or the US dollar index. We can see that we are officially above that anchored VWAP from the lows right here. And with that said, we got a bounce here from the 0.618 level, and the dollar is actually just slightly down today while the rest of the market is moving higher. Now, if we zoom out a little bit and activate the indicators, we can see that the daily MACD here is currently on a buy signal, or an early buy signal. We can see a tick up here of the money flow indicator. Now, both of these indicators are somewhat oversold here, but what we're looking at now is this squeeze going on right here. And if this thing breaks out on the oscillator, and whatever the direction goes for the DXY, whether it goes up or down, that could be a very substantial move, whether again towards the upside or the downside. So we're watching the US dollar here, and again, this is going to be the pivotal moment for where this market could be going. Now, it's still very suppressed from these current levels, but there's still a possibility that the dollar could go much higher before it moves lower and breaks this long-term trend that we looked at in a previous video. Let's switch over and take a look at the Tesla stock, and what I found this to be very, very interesting is that Tesla has been knocked down now twice from this lower high trend line, but we can see this ascending triangle being played out. And when I look at the chart here, I can see some interesting things happening. Number one, we're getting knocked down, but still we're above this anchored VWAP from the highest point here, and that suggests that buyers are still not giving up on this stock from current levels. We're also above this POC line here, which is very interesting, and we're seeing the kind of scenario where the SPY is currently, where it's finding support at the POC as well. So we're actually getting an extension of the S&P 500. We could see Tesla actually breaking out here, and once we get that correction, we could see just a retest of this trend line before moving up higher. Another thing to notice is that Tesla has actually been above the 233 EMA here on a daily chart, and it's been struggling and just moving sideways from these levels, and that suggests that buyers are now in control. Whether that depends if Tesla is going to be higher or lower, for me, when I look at the chart like this, it says that the bulls are in control and we're likely going to see a breakout very, very soon. So keep an eye on Tesla here for where the direction of this market is going. I know there's a lot of fluff here where the dollar is going, Bitcoin is going, and so on. We are in this wait and see mode here for the markets, and that's why we have to go through the technicals here on a day-to-day basis. But Tesla could give us some clues here that we could actually see an extension here of this market. So that was it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you haven't already, consider liking and subscribing. You can follow me on X. The handle is Nomad Hedge. I post a lot of good things there. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care for now.